Well, this is the third year that we've done this. We get a lot of positive feedback. The shows with Kevin Doran hosting the Newsmaker shows. And this is Kevin from December of 2012 when he spoke with Texas Republican Tom Pauken. Kevin, as you may remember, was very suspicious of the Washington establishment, including the Washington, what you'd call the country club Republicans. And that really comes out in this show again from December 2012 with Tom Pauken.
Well, folks, last year, long before the Republicans nominated Mitt Romney, we had with us a fellow by the name of Tom Pauken. Does that ring some bells? Wrote a very interesting book. We bought some copies of that book to give away to our listeners. Tom's back with me today. He's in Texas. He knows most of the big principles in the Republican Party, starting with Karl Rove, and he's not a big fan of Karl Rove, not even a big fan of George Bush, and now is a little bit concerned that Jeb Bush will be the next nominee. Let's find out why he's concerned that it'll be Jeb Bush or someone like him in 2016. Stay tuned.
Next on News Talk, AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show with Kevin Doran.
Okay, Tom Pauken, great to have you back on the show, Tom. You were silent throughout the election, and as I said before we went on the air, I think I know why, but you go ahead and tell us again.
Well, in my book, Bringing America Home, the first chapter is entitled Starting Over, and I quote from Will Rogers, if stupidity got us into this mess, why can't it get us out? And or to borrow a phrase from my old boss, Ronald Reagan, status quo is Latin for the mess we're in. But I said, I'm sick and tired of the choice of lesser of two evils, and yet here we went again. Unfortunately, Mitt Romney, who was really not that many people's first choice, but kind of became everybody's second choice. And the irony is, in 2012, in that presidential race, if we'd had a conservative populist who could have united the economic and social conservatives, I think that person would have won going away. And it's just unfortunate that you had, in my estimation, a guy who wasn't comfortable talking about the social issues, continued to spout the neoconservative party line on foreign policy that you can use U.S. military force to impose democracy in the Middle East, and didn't have a serious economic plan to bring manufacturing home to the U.S. and rebuild, grow the private sector. And so it was just sort of the same old cliches and talking points that Republicans have been doing for a number of years, and I just, I thought that because of the opposition to Obama, we might have a chance to win it, but clearly that wasn't enough. But I think a conservative populist candidate with the right message could have won going away, because this is a failed administration.
Now,
the foreign policy front, in the foreign policy debate, here they're meddling around. They get rid of Mubarak. Okay, so he's a dictator. He's basically a secular dictator in Egypt. And who did the Obama administration put in power? The Muslim Brotherhood. Now we're doing the same thing in Syria. A great opportunity, had we had the right candidate, to say this is the worst possible strategy to deal with the threat of radicalism. What we're doing is making the situation worse, not better. And this was clearly the Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton policy. And in the debate, the commentator or the moderator brought all of this up. Obviously, Barack Obama defended his interventionist policy in those nations, but Mitt Romney, in effect, said, "Me too."
Yeah, that's right. He did. Tom Pauken is my guest. Bringing America Home. Is that the title of the book?
That's the title.
And it's still valid. In fact, as Tom said before we went on the air, it's probably more valid today than it was before the election. So you can still get it, friends, from all the usual suspects. Now, Tom, you're not too thrilled about the thought that there's a little boomlet for Jeb Bush going on out there. There you are, felon. Well, he's not a Texan anymore. He's a Floridian. But nevertheless, you've never been terribly enamored by the Bushes, correct?
Well, look, I once was fairly close to George Herbert Walker Bush back in the 70s, but in the Reagan administration where I served, and I will say the senior Bush is a real gentleman.
Oh, really?
But
fine
I saw.
guy.
I saw what happened in '84, beginning in '84. I left at the end of '84, early '85. But once the Bush-Baker forces got in power in 1989, after George Herbert Walker Bush had gotten elected president, there was a systematic purge of the Reagan conservatives, the Reagan Farm Club, a lot of talented individuals all over the country. And I think that's one of the reasons that we've had the problems that we have. Where are the leaders? And it was more about loyalty to the Bush family than loyalty to principle. And that's a complete difference from Ronald Reagan. I mean, I love working for Ronald Reagan. I really thought he was a wonderful man. But I was enthusiastic for him because he stood up for principles and he put policies in place, common sense policies, that got the economy moving again, won the Cold War with very little loss of American military lives, and made a huge difference in the direction of this country. And in the post-Reagan period, essentially, we've been given a choice of lesser of two evils, and the conservatives have been divided. The Karl Roves of the world, the political consultants who, Karl claims to be a conservative. Well, gosh, he fought against Ronald Reagan. He fought against those of us. I mean, I remember when I was elected state party chairman, I mean, Karl did everything he could to stop that. He wasn't successful, but he's consistently fought against philosophical conservatives and advocates this sort of politics of pragmatism. Well, look, pragmatism in advancement of our conservative principles is fine, but pragmatism just for the sake of control or getting a deal done ultimately doesn't work, and it's all fallen apart. They've dismantled the Reagan majority, and you got to rebuild it and what I say, start all over again. And we did pretty good in 2010. There were a lot of good people who were elected, and we got to build on that going forward. But Jeb Bush, here we go again. All of the usual suspects are lining up in support of his presidential bid in 2012. And I just said, we've had enough. These people are not going to turn this country around and get it back on the right track or rebuild a true conservative majority.
Tom Pauken, we're going to take a little break. We'll be back in a minute.
Are you more than $10,000 in debt? Feel like you're on a never-ending treadmill, staying in one place and never getting ahead with those minimum payments? Don't let the credit card companies bully you anymore. There are programs in place to help you get free of your debt, and you don't have to pay the entire amount you owe. The program at Total Financial Freedom can help you get debt-free in months instead of decades. Call Total Financial now at 800-899-8922. That's 800-899-8922.
Ready to create your own income with your own home-based business where there's no such thing as getting laid off? If a billionaire entrepreneur spent 5 years and $20 million searching for the next big trend, wouldn't you want to know what he found? If you're serious about making money from home without having to leave home, then write this down. www.goherenext.com. You decide your income. Get the facts now. GoHereNext.com.
Checking in now with meteorologist Rob Carolyn, who says on this Thursday, January 2nd, 2020, it's going to get warmer.
It is. We could touch 50 degrees in a few spots, Brian, which certainly is not bad for the second day of January, and we'll be up close to 50 again tomorrow and Saturday. Looks like the colder weather arrives Saturday night, and that hangs around through the early part of next week. A track of the storm system producing a lot of rain this morning, Brian, from Louisiana through Mississippi, Alabama, and into Tennessee. Some of that moisture is headed our way for late tonight and tomorrow. Then a second wave of low pressure will affect us Friday night and into Saturday. Today, not bad. We're starting to get rid of some of the cloudiness that was around earlier. It'll become partly sunny and close to 50 today. Sunrise this morning at 7:39. Sunset tonight at 4:50. We'll see rain arriving across the southern tier late tonight. It'll push in from southwest off towards the north and east. Lows tonight 35 to 40. Occasional rain for tomorrow. Still mild for this time of year, 45 to 50. Scattered showers are likely tomorrow night, 35 to 40. There'll be some rain Saturday, 45 to 50. And Brian, it looks like the rain changes over to a little bit of wet snow for Saturday night and into Sunday morning.
Does that mean freezing rain, black ice?
It looks like road surfaces that are untreated could have tendency to become quite slick Saturday night as those temperatures fall back to 32, Brian, and we get some snow on top of it. So, yeah, there could be some slick spots late Saturday night and Sunday morning.
And he was going after the Washington Republican establishment before going after the Washington Republican establishment was cool. To paraphrase a country music phrase. Getting back to the Newsmaker show with host Kevin Doran, guest Tom Pauken, again, the show from December 2012.
Some of you out there got the copies I was giving away of Bringing America Home. I bought several copies because I really felt that book put it all together. And the author is with me today, Tom Pauken. Now, look, if you think it's just a conservative treatise, you're wrong. It's really a very practical guide. And right now, we're seeing with this fiscal cliff looming and all that jazz, that this country is in serious financial trouble, not because of the fiscal cliff. That may highlight it, but we're in real trouble because we are in real trouble, period. And Tom lays out a plan there on how we can get ourselves back together again.
Well, you're absolutely right, Kevin, and that's why, in my estimation, no deal is better than a bad deal. And the Obama crowd, they're very arrogant. They want a victory, and they're going to essentially go in and say, we win, you lose by any deal the Republicans strike. So why not just bite the bullet and say a no deal and take the hit? You'll have a short-term recession, probably 6 months or so, but you cannot continue these trillion-plus deficits year in and year out because, as you point out, by the time whoever comes along next, it'll be too late if that continues. So just stop the spending. The reality is if you go ahead and do no deal, essentially the budget deficit for 2013 will go down from $1 trillion plus to a little more than $500 billion, and by 2015 it'll be down to $200 billion. And then you can go back and negotiate on specific issues, but don't be afraid to simply say, you know what, we've got to cut spending and we've got to get this thing under control, and we might as well take our hit right now because the government debt bubble is going to get bigger and bigger if you cut some deal which will increase spending, as the Obama administration wants to do. I mean, they're talking about more spending. And so I would say have courage and be willing to say no. And also, I wish we'd lay out some more sensible alternatives. I mean, I talk in my book about change the way we tax business. We have the most onerous corporate tax policy in the world with 35% corporate income tax rate, 7.65 employer portion of the payroll tax. Totally eliminate it, replace it with an 8% border-adjusted consumption tax. It would tax all goods and services coming into the U.S. while giving credit or allowing credit for tax credit against the consumption tax for all companies that are exporting. Level the playing field with our trading competitors. Reward capital investment, employment, and savings here in the U.S. And all of a sudden, the U.S. will start growing its private sector, growing its manufacturing base. But this is a time to be bold and lay out that agenda. And I think the people are for something along these lines because they understand you got to have a strong manufacturing base in order to have a strong economy. Let's not just always stay in the weeds and play on their territory. Let's frame the debate the right way and be the party of hope and opportunity for all Americans, because this is the type of approach that I think can win back a lot of the blue-collar Democrats and people that we used to call Reagan Democrats that'll be with us if they see that we're more interested in Main Street Americans than the Wall Street financial engineers who've helped get this country into the mess it's in with the bailout of the too-big-to-fail financial institutions. So I just think we've got to break with the club crowd that's running the Republican Party, the insiders, and begin to do what we did in 2010, what we did back in the Reagan movement and previously the Goldwater movement, build it from the grassroots up. The next conservative revolution is not going to take place from inside the Beltway in Washington, D.C.
Well, you've said a mouthful there, brother. Now, I mean, you're talking here about real courage, and that takes real men. Now,
you got the termites on the left who are doing what they can to undermine our foundations, are eating away at the basic structure of this private sector economy and our traditional values, and we got a bunch of politicians on our side who are more interested in personal power and personal advancement. And guess who wins in that kind of fight?
Sure, the bad guys. Now,
Yep.
because essentially you got bad guys, some worse than others. But give me a moment to stand up here. I got to pick up something from my bulletin board. Salary of retired presidents, $180,000 for life. Well, okay, right. Salary of a House Senate member for life, $174,000. They have to serve a certain number of years. I don't know what it is. Listen to this now. Salary of a Speaker of the House for life, $223,500. Minority leaders, $193,400 for life. Now you take someone like Nancy Pelosi. She's going to get $174,000 for being a member of Congress, $223,500 for being the Speaker, $193,000 for being a minority leader. Now, that's about $800,000 for life, and she's already a millionaire. Lord knows how that happened, but she is. Now, that gives you an idea of why these people are there, why they want to stay there. Listen, human nature. If you could vote your own salary and your own fringe benefits for life, you'd be very tempted, wouldn't you, Tom?
Kevin, that's very timely that you would bring that up. I was with a good friend of mine. He said, you know what, we need somebody in Congress to step forward in the House and the Senate during this period of time while they're all talking about the fiscal cliff and they're going to and everybody's going to have to suffer some, and stand up and say, it's about time that we in Congress suffered as well. We need to immediately cut our salaries by 10%. We need to change our benefit system to end the sweetheart deals we've given ourselves. Somebody like that who would be willing to step forward, I think it would light a fire, and they'd have enormous support from the American people. There's a huge disconnect from the American people and the political elites who are running our country, and quite frankly, on both sides of the aisle.
And I have family members who work in Washington, and they'll say to me, Dad, if you think there's a recession, come to Washington. Things are booming there.
Absolutely true. It's totally different from the Washington that I knew when I went to Georgetown University in the 1960s. There were small staffs. The salaries were reasonable. It was just a completely different atmosphere, and now it's about them. And I hate to say it, it reminds me of a congressman who started out as a conservative, and one of his staff members said she was shocked to hear him say, "Well, the first 6 years were for my constituents. Now it's my turn."
Yeah. And it's human nature. It's pretty hard to walk away. I remember Henry Hyde saying, they were trying to pass some measure. He said, you got to be like we are. Pass it in the middle of the night. Well, Tom, as we said earlier, it takes people to make this happen.
Right.
I'm not terribly optimistic with the present crowd, although I think there's some good men in there. But do you have any choices that you think could really lead the Republican Party back to a position of prominence and not just Me Tooism?
Well, I'm encouraged to see. I see it here in Texas, not at the statewide elected official level, but I see it with some of the young legislators coming up who really have the fire in the belly, and they really are in it for the right reasons. They're principled young people, and they're really committed to do the right thing. And I think that's developing around the country. We're building a new farm club. The Reagan Farm Club got decimated by the Bush crowd, but there's a new farm club coming up, and I think it's a little premature to sort of pick who's going to be the person in 2016. I'm older now, and I'm staying involved because we got to put a team back together, and the reality is that we had a great team during the Reagan years, but in the post-Reagan period, you've got too many people who have no philosophy, or too many people who don't understand there's not an I in the word team. It becomes about ego, and the strength of Reagan was he was a man of strong conviction, but also a man of real personal humility. He had a sign on his desk: "There's no telling, no limit as to how far a man can go or what he can do if he doesn't care who gets the credit." Now we got all these politicians out there; they're always sort of "me too" or "I'm in charge" or running in front of the crowd and then telling the crowd what the crowd wants to hear, and then proclaiming themselves the leader. This is not real leadership, and so I'm encouraged, but people have to understand the conservatives will only defeat the established Republican crowd and get back to our core values and representing the forgotten Americans, the middle-class taxpayers who don't have lobbyists in Washington and aren't looking for loopholes in the law, by putting a team together who learn to work together and stand for principle. I think we can do that. I'm actually feeling more optimistic as I get ready to leave the Texas Workforce Commission than 4 years ago when I first came here, because I'm seeing some signs of that here in Texas, and we don't have a team here. We've got too many people that have followed the Bush Rove model, top-down control, get the big money from the corporate interests, and then give the conservatives the rhetoric, but don't really do what's necessary to put good, sound policies in place.
Time is gone, Tom. I'll give you about 15 seconds. Tell them how to get your book.
They can go to tompauken.com, TOMPAUKEN.com, and order it from Amazon by going to the site, and also see the reviews of the book and some of the articles on how we bring jobs home to America and rebuild our manufacturing base.
Folks, I'm telling you, this book has it all, and you really ought to get it. It would give you a wonderful guideline as to which candidates you're for. That's it for now. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin.
Well, that wraps things up for the Kevin Doran Archive series for this week. And it's back to Dr. Robert Heinemann and current events tomorrow on the Newsmaker Show. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm Brian O'Neill. It's AM 1480 WLEA Hornell.